Okay, good. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. This is, I guess, the first virtual meeting where I'm quite glad the meeting is virtual. Because I haven't begun to shovel any snow yet, and I don't intend to do so until the snow squall warning is lifted. But anyway, thank you for all for being here. And I'll just go through the usual introductions of thanking the staff for all the work that they do to put all this thing together, and to tell any members of the public who are watching that if they want to participate in the meeting, they can call 905-815-6095 and make arrangements with the clerk to log in. For anyone out there who is watching already, there is a bit of a delay on the feed apparently, and if you want to really participate, you have to give a call right away. The agenda is published at Oakville.ca, and if anybody, again, watching wants to get the agenda on hand so they can follow what's going on, that would be good. We have 3 discussion and 1 information items today on the agenda, and I'm not sure if we're going to have the interim director of planning, Mr. Charles, joining us. I don't see his name here, but he may join us a little later. I hope, particularly with reference to item 4C, which might have a lot more planning input than would be normal. And just to remind everybody that we are an advisory committee, and that any recommendations that we make to council will go to the council meeting on Monday, 8th of March at 6:30 p.m. And if you want to delegate to that meeting, you should get in touch with the clerk at 905-815-6095 and let them know that you want to speak. I don't think there'll be any regrets, Madam Secretary, because I think everybody's here. So thank you again for that. The next item would be a declaration of pecuniary interest. Does anyone have a pecuniary interest with respect to any of the items on the agenda this morning? Seeing none, we'll move on. The minutes of the last meeting were issued to everybody. If there are no comments or concerns, Councillor Duddock has moved that the minutes be adopted as circulated. Is there anyone who wants to comment on that? Is there anyone opposed to that motion? Seeing none, the motion is carried. Discussion items. So it's Callan today. Susan's not on. None of her stuff is up today, so she's able to continue to work from home, I guess, without having to get on here. And it makes a lot of sense that you decided to do this from home today, Carolyn. I don't think that live would have been all that good. Anyway, item 4A is a notice of intention to designate the Featherstone Parkhead. Over to you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And there's one thing I want to mention. We do have a student here. Her name is Shreya Mehta, so she is joining us from Carleton University. Each year, Sue and I often do the Job Shadow program with the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario. And so what happens is we have a student come for the day, usually in person, and sort of follow us through different meetings and get to see a little bit of the side of heritage planning at the municipal level. So this year obviously is a little bit different because we're virtual. So Trey is just going to be joining us for here and there for meetings throughout the week. And so I thought the first one would be great for her to join just as a listener and observer would be this morning's Heritage Oakville meeting. So you can see her name there. She's just going to be watching today. So we'll get started on the first slide for this agenda item, and I think Jill has it there. Yeah. So this first item is for 307 Ironside Drive. Next. It's located in North Oakville, so this is east of George Savage Avenue, north of North Park Boulevard, and it contains the Featherstone Parkette. So what we're looking at doing today is moving to designate the Featherstone Parkette for its shade structure. The shade structure was constructed out of remnants of the former Featherstone Barn, which was located at 145 Burnthorpe Road West, just to the north of the location of the park. And the building or structure is considered to have historical and associative value. It's associated with the Featherstone family who farmed the land from the 1844 to the early 2000s. And in particular, William Featherstone was a notable person. He was the mayor of Oakville, a councillor, and heavily involved in different leadership roles with the Masonic Lodge. And then physically, there is heritage value for the salvaged materials, which are representative, or from a representative example of a 19th century bank barn. The materials include the lake stone from the foundation walls and a mix of hand-hewn and sawn lumber. And so staff is recommending that the property be designated for these reasons. Just a couple of photos here. So you can see on the wall there that was constructed out of the lake stone that was salvaged from the barn. And the wood you can see on the ceiling, this is the original cladding from the barn. And the plaque was also installed. This gives a history of the barn and the family, and provides context for those who are in the park. It's one of the most important things we try to do in North Oakville is retain as much as we can of this rural heritage, just so people who are even living and moving into these new neighborhoods understand the history and the context of where they're living, and knowing that there was quite a long, significant history of agricultural development within Trafalgar Township in these neighborhoods. So staff's recommendation today is just that notice be issued under Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act of the intention to designate the Featherstone Parkette. And I'll just note it's 307 Ironside Drive. For some reason, my computer did not like Ironside and kept autocorrecting to Ironstone. So wherever you see Ironstone, that should be Ironside. And just another note, this is a town-owned property, and we have been working with Parks and Open Space, and they've been supportive of it. And when we actually bring the designation bylaw forward, it would just be for the remnants of the shade used in the shade structure, and it would not apply to the contemporary amenities on the site of the park. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Carolyn. Wasn't it lovely to see the nice blue sky? Now we see some blue sky now, but the temperature has a minus sign in front of it. But that really looked lovely, and the structure looks really, really beautiful, really nice and really practical. And I don't suppose there'd be any objection raised when council, if it does publish its notice under Section 29, since the town owns the property. Are there any questions on Carolyn? Okay, seeing none, we can move on to discussion. Anybody wish to make any comments? Councillor Duddick?
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Chair. I just want to commend staff and our park staff for a good job on this. The plaque is beautiful. I love the fact that the wood is used on the underside of the
Brenda? So Brenda has moved that the staff recommendation be approved. Is there any further discussion? Is there anyone opposed to that motion? Seeing no one in opposition, the motion is carried. Thank you very much. The next item is 4B, which is a notice to amend the bylaw for 5 Bowbeer Road, or Bowbeer Road, I don't know quite which it is. Carolyn, it's up to you again.
Yes, 5 Bowbeer Road. So we'll just wait for this slide to come up. So this is 5 Bowbeer Road. Many of you remember it from a number of years ago. We'll go next to the location map. It's located on the east side of 6th Line north of Dundas Street, and many of you are familiar with this property when it was known as 3369 6th Line. That was the original farm lot that the house was located on. Next. So just some background, it's known as the Bowbeer House. It was built in the 1850s. It was designated in 2011. When the town was looking at it, and we worked with the owners at the time for designation, there were significant issues with the structural integrity of the building, and relocation experts thought that the building would not actually survive a relocation, which was typically our plan, in those neighborhoods, is to relocate the house nearby, but in this case, the actual outcome was to dismantle it and to store the materials. And this was all done with an agreement between the town and the owner. And then after several years of the materials being stored, the house was reconstructed, starting in 2019, and it's just been finished up over this past winter. So town staff is just proposing, if we go back 1 second. We're just proposing to update the designation bylaw. There are a few things that need to be updated, of course, the address first and foremost. Secondly, the description of the house. Previously, when it was designated in 2011, it was described as the original house. Of course, now it is really a reconstructed version of that house, and that impacts some of the heritage attributes that were listed in the original designation bylaw, which is attached to your report. There are also some interior attributes that were designated. The intent was to keep what could be kept and salvaged, and to replicate what couldn't. So some of it, of course, these materials were replicated, and so the designation bylaw will need to be a little bit more clear in terms of what's original and what was replicated. So staff is recommending that the bylaw be amended, and in this case, notice is only given to the owner. It doesn't go out to the public. It's just to the owner, and we've been working with the owner, who are still the developers for that site, and they have no concerns with updating the designation bylaw. So I'll just show you a couple photos, some before and after. So on the left, you can see the original fireplace that was included in the designation at the time, and the building has been reconstructed to the original dimensions. And this, you can see now that we've got the fireplace in its new, in the new home, in the exact same location. On the left, you can see is the original windows. A lot of the original windows had been severely damaged or destroyed even, and so new wood windows were made to replicate the original, as well as the trim and moldings you can see here where they were damaged. This is a view of the house. Again, it's pretty much in the same location, just a little bit closer to Dundas, but generally the same site. It was rebuilt using all of the original bricks. In a few cases, some new heritage bricks had to be incorporated where there wasn't enough bricks to be salvaged from the original house. But for the most part, what you see is the original bricks put back, as well as the lakestone foundation. Some of the original foundation had been changed to concrete, but they dug out the old lakestone and it's been reapplied to the new foundation, as you can see here. And on the rear, a two-story addition has been constructed, and of course, this would not be included in the designation bylaw since it's a contemporary portion of the building. And one really neat little feature, when the house was still standing on the left-hand side, you can see there was a brick with the name of one of the residents. I think it was James Halloran. They were there, I believe, in the late 1800s, turn of the century. And so we made sure that that brick was, kept and made a note of, and so they actually reinstalled it on the interior of the building. So what you're seeing on the right-hand side is the rear wall reconstructed, but they left it exposed within the new addition. So when you're standing in the new addition, you can see the back wall of the original house, and they moved the brick there just so that it's visible, and then everyone in the house for long term can see that brick. So it's a nice little feature. So the recommendation is just that notice be issued to amend the designation bylaw, and again, this would go to the owners who are supportive of this process, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Carol. So this is really a technical update on the original designation, and it's lovely to see how well the house seems to have been restored. I see there's a real fashion for black or dark brown painted windows emerging these days, but it looks quite striking on this house against the brick. Any questions of Carolyn on this? Brenda?
Just to compare with the house that we saw, I guess, a year ago, that's not sort of in the same neighborhood, what size of lot is this house on then?
This lot is bigger than the other one, and actually, because there is quite a large addition on the back of it, I don't have photos showing that. This one also is facing Dundas. There's quite a bit of room in front of the house where it faces Dundas and on the corner because it's a corner lot. So it is a bigger lot than the one that we did see on Post Road.
Okay, Brenda?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Carolyn. Any discussion? Okay, if everybody's happy, can I have a motion? George? And the motion is, I presume, that the staff recommendation be accepted. Any discussion on that motion? Anyone opposed to that motion? Seeing none, the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Carolyn. Now we move on to item 4C, which is a little bit more complicated, so I'll leave it up to Carolyn. This is a comment item. We're not being asked to approve anything today, but we are being asked, as you know, the form and function that we have here is to provide comments at this early stage of a planning application, planning development application. Okay, Carolyn, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that's correct. We are reviewing a development application and providing comment at this point. The development application is for 2507 Dundas Street West, which includes next. So it is located within the Palermo Village in the northeast corner. This yellow area here is just sort of noting where the original heritage buildings for Palermo Village still exist today. Next. So you can see it's well in the middle of Palermo Village. It was designated individually under Part 4 of the Heritage Act in 1993 for the 1868 Switzer House, and the designation bylaw speaks to the historical, architectural, and contextual significance of the property. So historically, it was constructed for Harvey Switzer. He was quite a well-known, prominent postmaster and successful merchant, and well-known in the Palermo area. And it was later owned by the Englehart family, also a well-known family within the Palermo and Trafalgar Township area. Architecturally, it's got significance for its 2.5-story red brick house built in the Canadian farmer Italianate style, and the designation bylaw does list several features which are considered to have heritage value: the arched windows, projecting gables with cornice and returns, heavy roof brackets, gingerbread detail on the porch, double-hung windows, projecting bay window, ornate doorway, and stone foundation. The bylaw also speaks to the contextual significance, saying that the property is a highly visible feature on Dundas Street and an important reminder of Palermo. So the current proposal you see today is to relocate the house within the site, restore it, and use it as an office space. And secondly, to construct a new storage facility and office building on the site. And the process that the proposal is going through right now is for a zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment. So any kind of development in this area would need to go through both of these processes. The existing development is, or the zone currently is existing development, which would only permit the existing use, which is residential. Of course, this house has also been vacant for a number of years. So any redevelopment of a site in this area would require this process. It would also require in the future site plan approval and heritage permit approval. Of course, we're nowhere near that stage, but I'm just making a note of it that even if this type of application, the application you see before you today, was to be supported and processed, there would still be two other processes that the Heritage Committee would be reviewing, and that would be site plan and heritage permit approval at a later date. Currently, there is no current policy regime in place. This was described a little bit more in detail in the staff report, but essentially we've had two official plan amendments for this area that have been appealed, and so they're currently not in place. Planning staff is proposing to take another town-initiated official plan amendment to council next month to get these policies in place, but currently they are not there. So what we're doing is reviewing the application, providing comment on really today from a heritage perspective, how the building, or how the proposal impacts the heritage building on the site. And so this is what we're looking for from the Heritage Committee at this stage. Next. Just showing on the left-hand side, a little bit hard to see, but it was a historical photograph from 1897, showing the house. And as you can see, for the most part, the house is in very good condition and has retained a lot of its original features. Some of the gingerbread and one of the porches has been removed, but overall it's really nice to see. It's actually in very good condition. Obviously needs some more love and attention, but it's a really great structure and still has all of its heritage value. Next, and just showing you here, there was previously a one-story non-heritage wing off the back shown in orange. That's actually gone now, I think, and we're really just looking at the two-story portion outlined in red to be retained, and that is the portion that's designated. There's also a little shed in the back that's outlined in yellow that would be removed. Those are the only remaining structures on the property. Next. I'll show you some more drawings, but just to show you first, look at the site plan. If you can see here, it's blown up in more detail on the right, but the existing house is proposed to be relocated to the west and to the south slightly, so that it would actually be closer to Dundas Street and be in the corner of the property. And then a new 6-story building is proposed for the rest of the site. And there's more drawings down below, but next I'll take you through some photos of the existing house. So these were included in your package. These were part of the Heritage Impact Assessment. These are from this past winter. So again, like I said, it has been vacant, but you can see it's still in good condition. Next. Just some photos of details of the gingerbread and the wood trim on the house. Next. Just showing a view, the east side of the house, you can see the Palermo Church in the background there on the left. Next. Couple more views from this side. And views from the back of the house where there was previously, as you can see in that historical photograph, there would have been a summer kitchen. It could have actually been, or very likely, the original building on the site, but that's long been gone. You can see remnants of it there. But of course, it was replaced at some point by the contemporary structure that was there until recently. Next. Again, just a closer up view of where that earlier wing was. Next, and you can also see on the right-hand side here where there was a porch on the west side of the house. So there would have been the doorway coming out and a west porch on that side. And just some more details there. And this is just showing there's a shed in the back, which of course is not considered to be of heritage value. So back to the site plan, again showing the house that has been proposed to be relocated, and a 6-story building which is proposed to have both used as a storage facility and office space, is proposed right in the center of the property, and surface parking is proposed on either side, to the west and to the east. This is a view from Dundas Street, mostly contemporary materials, glazing for the most part of what you see. It is 6 stories, but there is sort of an 8-story stairwell portion in the center. As you can see on the left-hand side, close to where the Heritage Building is, you see 2 large garage doors that would be associated with the storage facility. Next. And this is the east elevation, so this is the opposite side of the Heritage Building. Again, because it's a mix of office use and storage, you can see some portions have blank walls for storage facility use inside. Next, this is the west elevation, so this is the elevation that would be closest to the Heritage Building. And then, of course, this is the rear with more blank walls and the garage doors in the bottom. Next. Got a couple views here. The yellow, of course, is the Heritage House. What you see, the 2 white structures you see, the one in the middle is the Palermo United Church, and on the left-hand side is the red brick house in the corner of Dundas and Old Bronny Road. So this just shows you the new proposed building in context with the existing heritage buildings. And then this is the same thing, but we're looking northwest this time. And looking from across the street. And this is from driving down the road. So if you're driving west into Palermo Village, this is what you would see. And again, driving east from the intersection. So again, we're looking for comments today on the application. Hopefully all of you have had a chance to read through the Heritage Impact Assessment. In this case, we're not determining whether the property has heritage value. We already know it has heritage value, and it's designated under Part 4 of the Heritage Act. When it was designated, of course, there was no anticipation of a redevelopment of the site since it was about 20 years ago. However, at this point, we do need to make sure we're looking at the designation bylaw and understanding the heritage value, and therefore knowing and commenting on the impact of this development that it has on the heritage building and its heritage value. So again, in terms of process, the zoning bylaw and official plan amendment applications are to be processed by planning staff, and we include in that the comments from Heritage Oakville Committee as well as from Heritage Planning staff. So what I will be doing, and Jill and our clerk's staff will be doing, is taking notes of any of the comments that the committee members have today, and those will be taken in and also provided to the applicant through the planner who's processing the application. And again, just one more note, down the road, there would always still be a requirement for site plan approval and heritage permit approval, and both of those would come back to the Heritage Committee for comments. I think my last slide is just that the report be received, because really, again, this is just for the comments. And then one other thing I would note is we do have the planners representing the applicants here, and I believe they would like to do a presentation as well, but if anyone has any questions first for me, we can do that.
Hey, thank you, Carolyn. A lot to read and digest, and I'm sure we'll spend some time doing that. Are there any questions, first of all, of Carolyn? Jerry?
Thank you, Carolyn. That was a bit of a challenge to go through, but very interesting. I wanted to ask you, Carolyn, were there other options presented to you other than the ones outlined in the package that we received in the preliminary process?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is all that we're seeing today in terms of proposal for the site. So there was, as far as I'm aware, no sort of significant amount of back and forth in terms of different options for the heritage building or for the site. What I've seen is just what you're seeing before you today.
Okay, so there were no, just to be clear, there were no other options incorporating the house in its present location and working around that with the new development in the present lot? No.
Correct. Not that I've seen. If the applicants do have any of that maybe they have done internally, perhaps they could speak to today, but not that we've seen through this process.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions of Carolyn? Okay, and just to confirm for everybody, the whole site is designated under Part 4 of the Heritage Act, not just the house. It's the whole lot is designated under Part 4, just so that everybody understands that.
Correct.
Okay. Now, we do have a delegation, so I'd ask the clerk to do which... Sorry, Russ, did you want to comment? Put your sound on, Russ.
Okay.
That's it.
If you look at page 99 of the application, I think some alternatives are discussed there, Jerry. I'm not sure, but alternative developments. Maybe it's on page 99 of the package.
That's for you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I did see that, but still there were no graphic developments showing the building as it is presently located in situ.
Right. That's
Okay. Okay, Russ. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yep, thanks. You can mute again.
Yeah.
Good. And Jill, have you got our delegate? I can see a box. I can't see you, Rachel. There, I can see you now. Okay, good. And I see from your CV you're a Gaelic speaker, so Kimara Hall?
Agama, tablet, Kimana shipping.
Agama. That's about my extent, but I remember that response as well. So I'm a lowland.
You have a good accent.
But it's a lowland accent, so.
Yeah, a bit.
Okay, so you've been watching it, so you see what's happened so far. We've had the presentation from Carolyn, you've heard some of the questions. So off you go and let us know what it is you think we need to hear from you. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I'm going to see the presentation. I have my own copy in front of me. Do you guys see the presentation now? No, okay. There it is.
Yes, it's coming now. We've got it. Thank you.
Still good morning. I hope everybody's doing well. My name is Rachel Redsch. I'm from MHBC Planning. I'm going to quickly summarize the Heritage Impact Assessment for the Spitzer House. I know Carolyn's done quite a bit of that already, so I'm just going to try and keep it brief. So we'll move to the next slide. So the proposed development, as Carolyn mentioned, is a 6-story building that will be used for storage as well as office space. And just to the left, the bottom left, you can see there is the 2-story Heritage House that is proposed to be relocated and used as an office. Move to the next slide. So relocation on site. So the existing location of the house is identified by that red dotted line. And that could be compared with where the house is proposed to be relocated southwest approximately 14 meters. And you can also compare it with the site plan. You can see that the main access is going right through the house there. So the main access is centered at the bottom of the site plan there. So we can move to the next slide. So rationale for relocation. So this may touch on that question that was just asked at the end there. So the North Oakville Heritage Review Resource Strategy does provide guidelines for us to prioritize conservation strategies. So the first most preferred option is to retain the house in situ, and that's in line with the Venice and Appleton Charter. And however, if that's not possible, the second most preferred option is to relocate the house on site and then manage the development in a manner that's compatible and respectful with the heritage resource. So if you look at the bottom half of the slide, you're going to see 2 excerpts. These are from the truck turning plan and transportation analysis. They're showing the main access to the site and the turning lanes in that light blue color. So these lanes are to facilitate the general traffic, but obviously as well as emergency vehicles that would need to get on site. The existing location of the house is situated within the red box. It's quite a faint outline, so I did identify it with the red box. So you can see that the existing location of the house does interfere with the main access and turning lanes that are necessary for the site to be viable. So the reason why you don't see graphics necessarily showing an option where the house is retained in situ is that in order for the site to be viable and to be accessed, these lanes and this access needs to be located where it is now, and that's where the house is. So it wouldn't be a viable development without having these lanes where they are, and the house is interfering with those lanes and the access to the site. So if we move to the next slide, you're going to see an updated rendering. This is looking northwest. So the house is moved closer to the Palermo United Church, just as Carolyn mentioned, and also closer to buildings that were identified as having heritage value to the village of Palermo. The new building is set back, and it also has step backs to allow for the visibility of the house and also for it to maintain its prominence along the streetscape. The design does use some neutral palette. They've incorporated some masonry on the first few levels to be compatible and respectful to the heritage building on site. We move to the next slide. So the next rendering is looking northeast. Again, the development groups the house closer with the buildings to the west. It does have a similar setback, and the new construction was purposely, again, tucked into the site so that these existing buildings can maintain their prominence along the street. Okay, so we can move to the next slide. So our conclusion for the impact assessment is, first of all, we did see a beneficial and positive impact. The house is currently vacated, so it is vacant. So the development does allow for the adaptive reuse of the house and will provide a viable opportunity for it to be used and conserved. There's also the economic factor that the development does provide the funding to conserve the building. So the adverse impacts that were identified was a minor impact of destruction, alteration of heritage attributes. They will be removing the original foundation, which is identified as a heritage attribute. And also there's always risk with relocating a heritage building. And then the other impact we identified was the potential impact of land disturbances during the construction period. So we go to the next slide. So these were the mitigation measures that we identified. The first is the stones for the original foundation should be salvaged and included in landscaping features on site. A structural assessment should be completed to confirm that the house, in fact, is a good candidate for relocation, and preferably by somebody who is a member of the Canadian Association of Heritage Professionals. A conservation plan that would cover the short, medium, and long-term conservation goals. A documentation of the building prior to relocation, so that's photographic documentation and measured drawings. And lastly, a temporary protection plan. So this is a form of a conservation plan which specifically addresses the protection of the building during the construction period. Move to the next slide. So we do acknowledge that the building is a vacant designated building and that the town does have specific policies for these circumstances. So we did review those, and we've included some stabilization and security measures. These include stabilizing the porch and completing any immediate repairs, inspecting the roof, the drainage system to make sure that it's adequate, maintaining heat, monitoring mechanical systems, ensuring that all the entrances and windows are properly locked and boarded up or otherwise securely closed off. And lastly, monitoring the property on a consistent basis. So that might be installing security valance cameras to deter against vandalism. So you saw some of the graffiti on the rear elevation, for example. So increasing monitoring of the property and making sure that there's deterring of vandalism. So we can move to the next slide. So conserving heritage context and compliance with town policies. So again, the North Oakville Heritage Resource Review Strategy does state that new development should be as much as possible physically and visually compatible, respectful, distinguishable, and maintain heritage buildings present on the property. So overall, we felt that in our conclusion, we did conclude that the proposed development does achieve these requirements, but we did make some additional recommendations. These being that the lighting be used to highlight the heritage building to ensure its prominence along the street and to enhance security, so particularly at nighttime. If landscape features are proposed, anything like fencing or vegetative buffers, they should be respectful to the significant views of the house and not visually disjoint the heritage building from properties to the west. And lastly, that landscaping be used to shield the transformer from view. So upon relocation, there is proposed to be a transformer in the front yard, so we are recommending that some landscaping be used to shield that so that it's more aesthetically pleasing. So, a bit of a mouthful, but that is the conclusion of my presentation. I am the heritage planner on the file, but we do have our general planners, the architect, and also the clients on the line too. So if you have any questions specific for them, they're here to answer them. Thank you.
Super, thank you, Rachel. The building I'm looking at, it's a form follows function type of building. It's storage, and it's kind of modular. Could it be flipped? I mean, because the heavy access of traffic and into those garage doors is right where the house is. If it was flipped the other way, that would move the access over to the other side and away from the house. That was just my first thought when you were mentioning access being the reason to move it.
Yeah, through the chair. So there were other options that we did discuss. Actually, there was the relocation of the house actually to the other side of the property, and there was some discussion along the lines of doing, we were proposing what you're proposing, but it had to do with the analysis. I'm not an expert of traffic, but apparently that is where they identified the main access to be. So, but it is a great question and something to think about for sure.
Okay, good. Right. Questions of Rachel. I'll get the speakers list. Councillor Duddick first. Okay, Kathy, off you go. And anybody else that wants to ask a question, just wave. I'll try and keep an eye on the screen at all times and get your name down. I'll give you a nod if I've got your name. Okay, Kathy, off you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Rachel. Rachel, thank you very much for your presentation and for taking the time to be here to hear firsthand. I've got a series of concerns, and I don't know for the benefit having you online so you can hear them. First thing that really sort of bothered me was the transformer in front of the Heritage Home. Is there a reason why that transformer cannot be moved over to the building side? Like you talk about softening with vegetation, landscaping, but it almost seems like the transformer is being located in front of a heritage building, which to me does not wash well.
Yeah, through the chair, yes, I agree with you. I've seen this in a few occasions where they do put the transformer in front of, at the front part of the property, and I don't know exactly, I'm not an expert as to why they put it there, but yeah, I would agree that if possible, it would be better if, it would be preferred if the transformer was located somewhere else other than the front yard. So that's a discussion to be had. But we based our recommendations on what is proposed. So if it was to be there and there was a reason why it has to be there, the recommendation was to try and shield it from view so it doesn't detract from the building, from the heritage building.
Okay, my comment is it does detract, okay, end of story. Anyway, I have concerns about the lack of space that is provided around the building itself, especially abutting the building. I get that it's going to be used for office space, great reuse, but you don't give as much, what shall I say, space as you do on the westerly edge. You've just got right up to the driveway sort of thing, which I get, but it just makes it even more stark in terms of the building being sort of out there. Like you don't even have an opportunity to landscape, you don't have an opportunity to soften the edge. Is there a way you can move it slightly over so as to provide a little bit more space between the building that you're proposing and the heritage building?
Through the chair, yes. So that was a discussion that we've had, actually. It was one of the main discussions that we had. I know that where they located it, again, was to do with the turning lanes and the parking even to the rear. And I think maybe they were thinking the lesser the distance that we have to move it, the better. So perhaps maybe why it's so close there. I mean, there is obviously discussion to move it a little slightly more to the west. It would just increase, obviously, the movement by a few meters. But it is a good point, and we'll review that.
Okay. The other thing, and I guess it will come to fruition through the site plan process, my concern is the landscaping to soften between the modern building and the heritage home. It just sort of seems like it's put on a postage stamp in front of it. So if and when we get to the site plan, anything that can be done to soften the sort of edge between the modern building and the heritage building would be great. The other thing is, and I guess it speaks to the safety of the building during the construction process, and maybe this is also a note, Carolyn, I know that when we did the one down on Lakeshore across from Appleby, there was a huge sign that was erected indicating it was under the surveillance of the police and being monitored. And it really sort of sent a message to anybody, in addition to cameras that maybe are used on site, to say that there's eyes and ears on the property at all times. So I would just offer that as being a concern. The minute anyone sees something like that, they automatically think it's free for all. So those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Jay?
Mr. Chair, I wanted to ask, these are questions, will we have an opportunity to have further comments after we ask questions of Rachel? Or is this the opportunity to do everything at this point?
No, we'll move to discussion in the board afterwards to gather all the comments back and forward in and out. This is the opportunity to ask Rachel some specific questions.
Okay.
And move on from there. Okay, Jerry, so off you go and ask your question.
Okay, thank you, Rachel, for the presentation. When I hear what you're saying, it all sounds really positive and pleasant, and then I look at the graphics and I read the information provided in the package, and there is a discord in my interpretation and in my reading of it. I do want to ask the particular question again that I asked initially, and that Russ directed us to page 99. You do have, it says here you have an option, there is an option to keep the building in sight. When you were describing that the building is in the way of the laneway, the heritage building has been there for almost 200 years. So in this area, we are known for relocating roads to accommodate heritage trees, just a few blocks down on Bronte Road. I would have thought that there would have been maybe a little bit more emphasis on trying to develop a scheme with the building in place so that we could see the process and the exercise before providing a proposal, so that as planners, as committee members, as residents of this town, that we can see that there were exercises taken and that it was not possible and it was very difficult, or not possible to do at all. But I don't see anything here. Is there anything that you've done that you can show us to demonstrate that it's an impossibility? Because I see, when I look at this site and I see this beautiful large square, I see an opportunity for providing the building in its present location as a gateway into the site, and opening up the site as an amenity to the town, to the development, to the street, bridging across the street and bringing in a mixed-use development. So the question is, were there other exercises undertaken by your firm to show that the building cannot stay where it is?
Yes, through the chair, and also just to mention, the architect and the general planners are on the line as well, so they can provide maybe a bit more information when it comes to general planning and why things are located where they are. So when we do our assessment, we're looking at all these different, facets to the development. So we did have discussions with the architect and the planners and trying to find a balance. So, the main reason why we proposed the relocation again was that traffic study, and I understand that it's maybe not the end all, because there have been some facilitated that maybe in other situations. But we've received that report. We have the architects having a specific type of design. They do have to accommodate so much parking and so on. So once we factor in all these different parts of the development to make it viable, that's why we came to this decision of relocation. And I agree with you. There's always room to make some more discussion. But from the information that we're getting from other professionals, such as the traffic engineers and the architects and the planners, when they put in their information as well, sometimes when we finish at the end of the day, the best compromise is in this case we believe was the relocation, and I think it had to do with the fact that they believed or we believed that the site wouldn't be viable any other way. So it maybe, I don't know through the clerk if we could have maybe the other planners, David McKay and Celeste, could perhaps answer better than myself, and we also have the architects. So I don't know if we can add them in, maybe not. Let's let's see, oh, there's David McKay. So, yeah, David McKay and Celeste are the general planners, so they can provide more information maybe when it comes to the general planning, and I don't know if I see the architect yet. But I'm just going to pass it on to them and see if, because they've been working on this for quite some time as well, so they can probably provide some more information as well as to why the site is proposed to be developed the way it is and why, we're situating the house where it is and proposing relocation.
I guess just to reiterate, Rachel, were there any schemes done that incorporated the building where it's situated right now? This is a Part 4 designated building and site, so the priority of heritage in this case is high. So in balancing priorities of traffic studies, financial viability of the site for development, et cetera, where does the priority of heritage rank? And so we would really, it would be beneficial to see options that keep the building in place. So the question is, were any of them done, or was it just automatically decided that, for expediency, that the building be moved?
Okay, so David, you were able to hear us and you were able to hear Jerry articulate her concerns.
Yes, thank you.
Maybe you could respond to that for us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is David McKay. I'm a partner with MHBC in our planning component. And through you, so when we started looking at this project, there was a number of considerations that were taken into account, both our clients' programming, also the heritage component. There is a water course on the east side of the property with a culvert and recent roadworks that were completed by the region, as well as obviously just the fit of the development on the property in anticipation of intensification, which is called for by the various policies that have been brought forward by the town and under appeal by others, and certainly what is being proposed going forward is intensification on these lands and adjacent lands. So we did look at a number of different options in terms of the heritage building, leaving it in place, incorporation into the building to see if that could be done, and obviously that's an architectural process, traffic as well as part of those constraints. And in discussions with the architect and with Rachel, we looked at those various options, and I don't have them here. We can produce them and provide them to the committee through further discussions. We looked at it and said, well, what's the best solution? What do we think is the best solution? And so we did look at incorporating the building into the building itself. It was felt that would detract from the heritage attributes of the building, given the more modern look of the building that our client is proposing. There are numerous examples, obviously, throughout Ontario where that has occurred. And we felt in discussions with Rachel and my partner, Dan Curry, that was not the best approach. So we looked at, relocating the Diamond building, this Diamond Center, around that to relocate the access points. And the problem is as you can't really move it to the west because there's not enough room there to make it function in terms of the driveway west of the heritage building. So we really have to look at what's to the west or to the east, and that starts to create conflicts with the bridge that was constructed over the creek, created by the region. It starts to create some other issues on site in terms of circulation. But we did look at those various options. So then we looked at, okay, well, what do we do in terms of relocation? So we did look at, do we move it to the east to give it prominence from the east, or do we move it to the west? And Rachel's recommendation was to move it to the west in order to further contribute to that corner and toward the heritage buildings to the west, and to really strengthen that component. So we did look at a variety of options. We aren't coming into this cold to say, just move it out of the way. We did look at various options. to see how this could fit with the overall program of the site, and we're happy to continue to work with staff as part of the process going forward. So this was our first shot to take our best shot and see what we could do, and that's what we came up with. But we're happy to have further discussions with both staff as well as the committee on this matter. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm glad to hear you're a Mackay and not a McKay.
Thank you, sir.
Jerry, did that answer your question for the moment?
Thank you. For the moment, yes, I think I have some further comments in our discussion session. Thank you.
Super. Are there any other questions of the applicant's representatives now that we've got a trio? Are there any other questions of them? Yes, off you go.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, through you. Looking at the package on page 142, it's the diagram from Nicholas Karagiannis, the architect, and it shows bollards at two different locations on the property, and then it shows where the laneway is. And I'm wondering, first of all, what is the rationale for the bollards there? And also, my question is if this is a two-way lane, is that gap that's between the two buildings sufficient to allow for the truck traffic? Or is that why the bollards are there, to protect the buildings?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I do see, I believe that those two bollards you're referring to, Ms. Sweeney, is at the one corner where there's an office access indicated at that point. And it's really a safety concern. I mean, everyone can drive. Everybody knows how to drive, but some people not as well. And so it's obviously in a number of cases where there is a close pinch point, as shown, bollards are put in place to protect the building. In terms of the driveway, it is 6 meters, which meets the requirements for a two-way driveway.
Hey, Brandon? Okay. So I guess what you were saying earlier about the waterway and the bridge and stuff is fine. You could flip the building and have that main driveway with the main access to the big garage doors to the east.
Not without significant problems, sir, yes. Yeah. Like as you start to see, there is the embankment, there is the culvert piece there that's being constructed, and so we wanted to stay as far away from that in terms of access to the site, which is already restricted to a right condition.
Sue.
Hi there, thank you for taking my question. My question is, why have the garage doors of the loading bay in the front of the building all, that really those could go to the back building a couple of times in the last 4 or 5 years. And the one that I've used has been in a far less sensitive area than this, and certainly not associated with any kind of heritage buildings. And all the loading bays were at the back. You know, there was no problems with having garage doors and this sort of real strong utility presence in the front of the building. I mean, that was the first thing that struck me when I saw the renderings was, you know, you've got the heritage building there and you've got sort of nice little white people there so we can get some scale. So if I'm standing at the corner of that heritage building and I'm looking left at the lovely heritage building and on the right, there's 2 honking garage doors. You know, I mean, it's right there in front of my face is a driveway with trucks going in and out and garage doors. I really feel that those need to go to the back. If, you know, since the building can't be flipped, let's get rid of the loading docks in the front. Is that possible?
So through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, so the Diamond is, in terms of their storage business, I'd say they are the Ritz-Carlton of storage. You know, everybody thinks of storage as orange boxes out in the field or in an industrial area surrounded by razor wire and things like that. So Diamond's whole perspective on it is to change that paradigm. And so what you see in terms of the those garage doors are actually architecturally designed glass doors, so it allows all the light from the building to come out. They are high speed. So when a customer drives to the front of that door, it raises within 10 seconds and lowers in 10 seconds. It's not a loading dock per se in terms of what you think about in terms of loading docks for big trucks and whatnot. This is for customers that come inside the building, pull over to the side, load and unload in a weather-protected area, completely enclosed within the building, where they can be served by Diamond's representatives and facilitate movement in and out of their storage room. So that is the whole premise of that feature. It's not there is a loading dock. It's at the rear of the building in terms of for larger trucks that happen once a week, on a large 52-foot trailer. But the majority of that access to that area is people's vehicles, personal vehicles, or acute vans that they rent from Diamond. So the idea is to encapsulate that, create a great customer experience. And really, when you look at storage facilities, the traffic generation from a storage facility is significantly low. For this size of facility, which is fairly large, but any facility, parking requirements, for example, are about 15 spaces for the storage component. And we facilitate that even better through that internal area for the customers. The majority of the parking that's shown on that property is actually being driven by the office component, which Diamond is also has a business on in terms of offering office space and third-party leasing, as well as co-working components. So that's kind of how it all functions together. So relocating them to the back really takes away from the purpose of the whole Diamond model for that customer satisfaction. Now, I've heard a couple of comments about, can we flip the building? Can we do this? Can we do that? So we'll take a look at this. We've already done it, but we'll go back and revisit a lot of these comments, and I do appreciate it.
Yeah, I think if there's some way, because those garage doors, as lovely as they sound, they're still garage doors. And they're right there in your face when you're next to the standing and experiencing the heritage building. Great that there's not going to be heritage building right there in terms of scale, these great big garage doors. So it'd be nice if we could get rid of them or move them or something. I'm not the architect, but that's my concern. Thank you for your answer.
Thanks. So you were breaking up a bit there, but I think we got everything. And David, you drive through. These garage doors to the front, they're matched by a pair of similar doors to the rear, aren't they? Because you drive.
That's correct. So it's a one-way access in and out of the building for the customers.
Yes.
And so you pull in, and there are a couple of Diamond facilities now operational in the GTA. They're mainly they were started in Ottawa. So if anyone's up in Ottawa, they can go visit a Diamond location. There are 2 locations now open, one in Oakville and one in Brampton. And I'd be happy to have anyone who would like to visit. We can arrange a visit with our client to see what the facility is all about. Because it is a completely different paradigm than what has previously been proposed.
Okay. Super, thank you, David. Are there any other questions? Nope, seeing none, we'll move into the next stage. So thank you to the 3 of you. Celeste, we didn't really get to you, but I guess everything that was needed was provided by Rachel and David, so thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you too. The clerk will now sort of move you off into the holding area, so you will all sort of exit stage right at this point. But thank you very much for your presentations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so we're back to the board. We've had a chance to look at it. Jerry wants to speak next, so I'll put her down. Anybody else that wants to speak, you just wave and I'll try and keep an eye on the screen and see if I can get, and I can see, I think that was Kerry that was indicating she would like to speak, so I've got 2. Okay, Jerry, off you go, and then Kerry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to look at our the little comment here, key points for consideration. And it says here, this is being brought forward for feedback from the Heritage Oakville Committee members. And I'd like to take full advantage, if I may, this morning, I just wanted to begin, when I saw this package, there were so many challenges in reading it with the heritage designation of the site that Jane Jacobs popped into my mind. And for those of you who don't know Jane Jacobs, there was a book written by her in 1961, so exactly 60 years ago this year. And it's called The Death and Life of Great American Cities. And just a little summary, she advocated for dense, mixed-use development and walkable streets with the eyes on the street of passers-by, helping to maintain public order. And that's the little summary of her book. It's much more complicated, but that popped into mind when I saw this, because I thought to myself, this is, in my opinion, totally inappropriate for the location and the site, for the area, the use, etc. This proposal, architecturally and in form, is lovely, and it would have been much more relevant a block north, right at the intersection of the 407 and Highway 25. I think it would make perfect sense. And I've seen buildings by the same architectural firm that, similar forms that isolate that type of wall structure on a traffic island. I think it works very well. However, I don't think it works well here at all on many levels. It's interesting to note that there were options taken, and I was so happy to hear David say that they were glad to hear that this is a first stab, and they're looking forward to opinions from, heritage and planning and all the other parties involved. This building in form, it's a wall. It divides rather than bridges across. We need bridges across the heritage building to the new development, from the development of the site across the street to Dundas Avenue to the community. Relocation of the heritage building itself should be a last resort. They're relocating it 14 meters over. Surely there could be an opportunity for keeping that heritage building in place, creating an entry courtyard potentially for for some public amenity to give back to the community, to give back to the street, to give back to heritage itself. There are examples of developments using the same materials or materials sympathetic to the heritage building, echoing the forms of the heritage building, or others in contrast, but they need to be done so that there is a harmonious relationship and a balance. I don't think the new development is harmonious neither in form nor in use to the area or to the building. It looks as though the heritage building, when you look at the picture of this, the heritage building seems to be an afterthought, and it's almost, a bother in its location. They have to, it's a pimple in the development. It's not sympathetic in form, not sympathetic in massing, not sympathetic in style, and its location is incidental. And there should be some aesthetic bridging with old and new, if not functional bridging at least. Storage facilities give nothing back to the physical architectural environment and would be better located, again, north on a traffic island. I guess much more can be expected of a development with a Part 4 designated building and site. And when I read all of the analysis, I'm reading the words, as I mentioned to Rachel, I read the words, but when I see the building, I see the form, it just doesn't make sense to me. This is not my interpretation. I look at page 86 and it says, 86 and 87, destruction or alteration of heritage buildings. Shadows. Is there a level of impact of shadows? And the answer here is no, and I would say yes, there is an impact of shadows. There is certainly an impact of shadows of that tall 6-story building with a wall function. Isolation, no, yes, there is isolation. Page 88, direct or indirect obstruction of views. It says, no, yes, there will be direct obstruction of views. So my interpretation of going through the chart and the analysis is in opposition to what I'm reading here. And when you read the description without looking at the site and what they want to do, it all sounds lovely, but when you're actually looking at the form and you're looking at the building, and look at page 94, it doesn't make sense. And it looks as though the description is of a totally different development and a totally different building. So I think, in conclusion, I think there are so many challenges with this proposal, both in function and in form, that I think, I would say no, not appropriate at all.
I hear you, John. I hear you. Okay, thank you. Kerry, you were next on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was actually just going to say something in favor, I think, of the development. I actually like the thought of moving the house over to the other existing heritage buildings. It kind of gives, to me, some massing, if you will, of being put closer to its teammates, so to speak. I can't think of the proper architectural wording for it, but I actually do like putting them closer to each other. It kind of gives a massing of the heritage buildings, so that's actually something I do like, barring the fact that having a transformer, which to me, I would agree with Kathy, it should be moved, and I'm sure there's plenty of opportunity to do so. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kerry. Anybody else got a comment? Yes, Russ, off you go.
I hear Jerry, and I tend to think she makes some very valid points. I would just ask, Dundas Street itself is the problem. I mean, it's no longer a town street. It's a rural, thoroughfare. It's 8 lanes wide. People are not walking up and down Dundas Street as depicted in these drawings. It's becoming more of an industrial site, whether we like it or not. And the street itself tends to, depict the traffic, 6 lanes, etc. And I think the development proposed makes reasonable use of that piece of property. I don't know what else you put there. Houses, people aren't going to walk around up there. It just doesn't happen. So this Dundas Street itself probably is going to have an LRT on it 15 years from now. So who knows? That's my view.
Okay, thanks, Russ. Any other comments? Councillor Gittings.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Diane, further to Jerry's comments there, could you just provide a little information regarding our OP and our zoning, which led us to the possibility of this being in the location that is proposed?
Absolutely. So this area has quite a history. It's part of the North Oakville West secondary plan, which was appealed. I think that the applicant made mention of that. It was identified in that secondary plan as a special area to consider. So the town initiated study of OPA 306, looked at this area and envisioned mixed-use buildings. Since we initiated the official plan review, we developed an urban structure. In the urban structure, building on a lot of the work that was done in 306, identifies Palermo Village, both north and south of Dundas Street, as an important growth area. What we've done is we did a town-initiated study. We had a staff public meeting at the end of November, and since have had a workshop with council about Palermo Village and what it's envisioned to be. And it is going to be a mixed-use area. One of the things we did do in the new Palermo Village policies for the area was we had offered new heritage policies that are a lot, they offer a lot more protection to both designated and listed buildings, and they emphasize the importance of maintaining and integrating those heritage resources. So there's a definite emphasis on conserving So the timing of that is we would go to a staff public meeting later in March with a recommendation report, incorporating the policies we heard from the public and from council, and the council would adopt it, and it would move on to the region. We envision this area as a mixed-use area. Dundas Street is a challenge, absolutely. There is a future BRT that Metrolinx is working that will go from Kipling to Burlington, I believe, that they're working on. So this is an opportunity to build on the area to the south and kind of integrate north and south and not think of them as different, thinking of Palermo Village as a village both north and south of Dundas. There are challenges, absolutely, but there's also lots of opportunities for this area. Is that what you're looking for, Councillor Giddings?
More than I, you exceeded my expectations, thanks.
Thanks, David. Just while we've got you, Dan, I mean, this is one of these situations that lawyers must salivate over, because there are appeals, two sets of appeals with all the official plan proposals for up there, and that's off to the new and improved OMB. So LPAT is sitting on that right now. So if a development here was bought into by Heritage, by planning, by everybody else, and if the town wanted to make the official plan amendment and the zoning changes, that would have to go to LPAT, I presume, because they're already deciding what the use for that particular place would be, and they would have to approve it as being consistent with the overall decision that we would expect them to render at some date in the future. I know that sounds a bit convoluted, but it seems there are layers of activity here.
Yes, there are definitely lots of layers of activity, which is why it was appropriate to study the area and put into policies what's important and what we envision for the Palermo Village area to be. So yeah, there's appeals at the region as well. It is very complicated, but this would be what we're trying to bring through the process to a recommendation report to council later in March is what we think is the best use of the area and implement our urban structure that the council already approved.
But LPAT would have to buy into that.
So what happens is the region is our approval authority, and it's a little bit different right now, and some of the region has the ability, they're working on their official plan review, which is, give you a little planning lesson, a municipal comprehensive review, which is a little bit different, and actually their work is actually not appealable, so it's a little bit different, but this is why this is outside of that official plan review, and that's why they have a site-specific official plan amendment proposed as part of the application. It's not a rezoning, that's why they're suggesting to amend the official plan.
My head is hurting already. All I can say for Diamond, the developer here, they're very brave to have jumped into this part while it was still public. Anyway, are there any further questions or comments? Has Carolyn got all of the comments and picked it all up, and whoever else is doing it? Brenda, did you want to say something else?
Thank you, Drew. I'm through you. I just have one further question. Is there any insight available as to what's planned for the property address at 2517? It's in between the church and the property we're discussing today.
I think that's the church rectory right now, is it? So the church owns that, I guess, Carol?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. So the church owns that is their rectory. And as such, like at this point, we have not heard any development proposals from them. Obviously, as you can imagine, a small church, a rural church, with dwindling members, there's no proposal or anything that they've put forward. I am also not aware of them selling the property. But obviously, at some point, we would anticipate some kind of development there. But at this point, and of course, we would want them to be in line with whatever policies are approved by council for this site, for this area. Again, as Diane mentioned, mixed use, transit-oriented, pedestrian-friendly. So we do anticipate development for this whole corner, the northeast corner of Palermo, but at this point, there's no particulars or any proposals that we've seen.
Okay, thanks, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brenda. Is that it? You got your answer. Good.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Joe.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I have a note from Rachel that the architect would like to join the meeting, who was supposed to have already pre-registered. He hasn't joined the meeting at this time. But Rachel has indicated that the architect could respond to some of the committee questions.
Would everybody want to hear from the architect at this stage? Yes? Yes, well, I think yes, if the committee wants to hear from him and he's willing to sign on, that would be good. Can you get him in, Joe?
Mr. Chairman, the architect was to have signed in advance, and I don't have him, so I'll have to resend him the link. So I need a moment.
By him that he wants to join?
The architect was to have pre-registered for the meeting and has not.
Other representatives here. So if he didn't register, presumably he didn't want to appear, or have you got new information?
The architect was part of the combined delegations, and he is to be available for questions, but he did not pre-register on his own. I don't have him in the meeting.
He didn't register, and we did have 3 other people there, and so I think we probably got as much input as we needed for the questions that we had. So we'll just let that one pass, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Everybody has given their comments. If Carolyn has got them all noted and can make some sense and cohesion, we have some great ideas, but they come from so many different directions that it's always useful to have somebody keeping track of them all. So if that's it for that, we need to move that the report be received. I think that's all we need to do at this stage. So can I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Duddock. So we have a motion that the report be received. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, the report is received. Okay, so the next item is...
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, did you read the statement on the recommendations going forward to council, please?
Okay, Jill, is that what you're talking about? I did that right at the head end. I talked about the next, all of the recommendations go to the 23rd of March or whatever the date is. So I've done that. Okay, so number 5, we have a list. The delegated heritage permits is a process, as you know, takes place in the background under our delegation bylaw, and they get reported to us every now and again. Well, this has been a somewhat strange year, and that sort of reporting thing kind of fell out of the standard work plan, which kind of got dismantled. But we have now a whole list of these, and I can see 420 Trafalgar Road about 15 times, as well as I had to deal with some issues that they had. So I hope they're making progress. So you've got all of that. Now, normally we would say to you, after the meeting, go and ask Carolyn or Sue about those. We can't kind of do that, but if anybody has any questions on any of those, just email Carolyn and she'll get back to you right away, okay? So you've got that list, so I need a motion to receive the information items. And I think Bob was scratching his ear there, which is his indication that he wants to move that. So that has been moved. Any discussion? Anybody opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. So the date of our next meeting is the 23rd of March, 2021, which will undoubtedly be virtual, because I don't think they're going to lift any of the restrictions quite that quickly. So we'll look forward to seeing you again. So I'd like to thank you all again for the gift of your time. I hope your backs are in good shape to go out to your driveways and try and get them clear. And so have some fun for the rest of the day. So a motion to adjourn.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. A motion to receive the information item, please.
We did that.
Oh, right, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
And we
My
carried it.
apology.
So the motion to adjourn, is that coming from George? Or did George, did you want to speak? Switch your sound on. There you go, George, you're on.
Behind it, sorry. I just had a question. I don't know who knows or who has the answer, perhaps Carolyn, but is there any progress on or any consideration being given to the grant program this year?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the grant program is in full swing. The applications are coming in and they are due next month, and so you will see that coming forward, and we will be reaching out to the committee soon to get the working group going. So you'll hear from us fairly soon on that to get the review of it done in later March.
Great, and I did get the letter, so I knew that was happening. Okay, and George also, when you did that, moved to adjourn. Anybody opposed to that? No. So thank you very much again, everybody. Lovely to see you all. Take care. Bye.